Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. I'm going to talk about Upakha, that is equanimity. It's one of the most important qualities to develop. It has a very important role. It appears in several of the lists. It's one of the enlightenment factors, the Bojjhanga. It's a factor of highest jhana. It's one of the divine abidings. So it has many different contexts. So, first of all, to be clear about what we mean by Upekha, equanimity, we could say it has the quality of evenness or steadiness, and has also the associated idea of non-reactivity. It's associated with calm. In the list of the Bojjhangas, Upekha is included amongst those factors that lead to calm and coolness, together with samadhi and passaddhi, stability and tranquility. It's been classified in different ways, different kinds of equanimity. And Visuddhimagga has a list of 10 kinds of equanimity. There's another way of classifying it into 18 kinds, different ways of classifying it, because it does have different attributes in different contexts. It comes up in different ways, and it's useful not to confuse them. The first distinction to make would be Upekha as a feeling tone, Vedana, and Upekha as a mental formation, Sankhara. The most basic form of Upekha is as a feeling tone, as a Vedana. All feelings divided between the three classes of pleasure, pain, and neutral, that's Sukha, Dukkha, and Asukhama Dukkham, which means neither pleasure nor pain, and is also called Upekha. So in that context, as a feeling tone, it's not necessarily a very elevated spiritual state. It can arise just from the simple non-impactness of the object, like a dull, or we would say a boring object, an insignificant object would tend to not arouse pain or pleasure, and then that's classified as neutral, or in this context, Upekha. Upekha as a sankhara, as a mental formation, is more nuanced. It is the attitude of the mind holding things with evenness and non-reaction. The bare attention to the object without becoming either attracted or repelled by it. Another way to classify Upekha is by object. And here we have Upekha towards persons and Upekha towards dhammas. Upekha towards persons is the fourth divine abiding. You have the divine abidings, or the Brahma Viharas, of Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekha. And the first three all involve some kind of aspiration. May beings be well and happy. May they be Free of suffering, may they continue to enjoy the happiness they have attained. But Upekha doesn't have any aspiration. It's merely a holding of all beings, human and non-human, near and far, you know, whatever type or class or attitude of beings, to hold them all in the same regard as just beings subject to their karma, arising from their karma, so on. And this is considered to be, the fourth Brahmavihara is considered to be higher than or transcend the other three, because the other three involve some kind of aspiration, so there isn't a complete acceptance of reality as it is. But Upekha doesn't have any aspect of desire or will involved. It's just a recognition. Beings are as they are. And there is some quality of all beings that is equal, is the same. The Dalai Lama defined it once as, in one talk I heard of his, that all beings just want happiness, don't want suffering. The traditional or classic way of defining it is all beings are subject to their karma. They're all just experiencing the results of their karma. There's obviously multitude of ways in which beings differ. There's all a manner of kinds of beings, different realms, humans and animals and devas. There's male and female, there's young and old, there's healthy and sickly. And we could endlessly multiply the ways of classifying beings. But Upekha, the state of Upekha as a Brahmavihara, is an attempt to cut through that and see a core way in which they're all the same. Whatever manifestation a being is presenting at this time, whether they're human or animal or deva or whatever they might be, that's just at this moment the expression of their karma. And all beings are caught in that same process. And although the particular manifestations are infinitely variable, there is an underlying unity in that they're all samsaric conditioned karmic expressions. So the other kind of Upekha classified according to object would be Upekha directed towards Dhammas. A Dhamma here means an object of consciousness, a phenomenon. When all Dhammas are held with the same attention, then this is the Upekha of insight. And the particular expression of this form of Upekha is Tatra Majjhatthata, which is a mental state of holding everything equal with the same attention. The literal translation is the state of being in the middle about that. It's often translated, I think Bhikkhu Bodhi began that translation as specific neutrality. As the tatra is the specific part. It means that, like the hard pointing word is like that object. So what this means is that Tatra Majjhatthata is not a kind of fuzzy general, everything's the same kind of soupy feeling of general equanimity. It's a very hard, sharp, precise looking at this particular object that's arising right now and holding it with the same attention as every other object. This is a key principle of really holding the mind in this state of mind that we call vipassana, clear seeing, is that nothing is so trivial it can be ignored, and nothing is so important it needs to be held. When everything is held with the same degree of attention, without attraction or repulsion, without fear or fascination, just seen as it is in its own nature, with the same regard, then that's specific neutrality, tatramajjhatata, a very specialized form of upekha. Upekha directed towards individual dhammas. And this is the most liberating kind of upekha. This is the quality that takes the mind into the nature of phenomena and then allows the mind to go through that and emerge from phenomenology to the other side. Upekha has an important place in meditative development, both in the samatha series of the four jhanas and also in the insight series of the stages of insight. Upekha has a very high place in both sequences. In terms of the deepening of samadhi and the entrance into jhana, the first three jhanas are marked with, the first two are marked with piti and sukha, or loosely rapture and bliss. The third is marked with bliss, and the fourth is marked with equanimity, upekha. So upekha is considered to be higher than bliss. It's transcendent of bliss. And this is upekha as a feeling tone at its most sublime. Upekha as a mental formation is actually associated with all of the jhanas, or can be. One has bliss in third jhana, and the highest possible happiness is experienced in the equivalent state of third jhana. But the mind should not be attached to that and hold that with non-attachment, and that's the upekha as a mental formation. So it's said in the Suddhimagga, one who has good equanimity is equanimous even towards the highest bliss. The parallel to this in the cosmology is the fourth plane of Brahma beings, or the Vehapala beings, the beings of great fruit, which is at the summit of the Brahma world. And they are marked by equanimity. The third level, their Subhakina beings, are characterized by bliss, and it's said to be the greatest happiness in the cosmos is experienced in the third level. But the fourth level, they've transcended that, and they sit in perfect equanimity, and they have the entire universe of form laid out below them. So there's a natural association of that with equanimity. If you have the whole universe in your cognizance, then you can see all the pleasure and all the pain and beings rising and falling, and over here they're prospering, over there they're struggling. It all kind of evens out. and that it would naturally be a kind of equanimity, the only way to hold that. And that's the equivalent of the equanimity experienced in fourth jhana. In the insight path, the Vipassana path, there's the series of stages the mind goes through as it penetrates the nature of phenomena more and more. And when it reaches a very mature level of insight, it experiences what's called equanimity about formations. Sankara-upekha. It's a particular named stage, and it's the highest state one can reach by striving. The work is done at that point. That is not yet full awakening. It's not penetration of the unconditioned, but it's the only place from which awakening can occur. And at that point, there's nothing you can do to make it happen. And this is when the equanimity in the mind is very strong, and the mindfulness is very strong. So phenomena are seen with great clarity, but the mind is in no way disturbed. It doesn't become excited or elated by pleasant phenomena or wonderful phenomena, and it doesn't become depressed or frightened or downcast by painful phenomena. It doesn't even become bored by neutral phenomena. It's just present for all of it. This is much like the state of mind of those Vihapala beings. You're seeing the whole universe of your own mind unfolding, and it all balances out. You're neutral. You're just sitting there in neutrality as these things rise and fall. So it's important not to confuse this kind of equanimity with indifference. Indifference is said to be the near enemy of equanimity or upekha. It's not an indifference. It's not that we aren't concerned about anything or ignoring anything. It's that we've transcended those states of either desire or repulsion, of worry, concern, or hopefulness or desire, anything else. It's not that we've suppressed them or put them down, it's that we've gone beyond them. There's one writer on spiritual matters, Ken Wilber, who's considered to be one of the founders of transpersonal psychology, and he's written a lot of books. And he's got a very kind of encyclopedic mind. He sort of read everything there is to read and regurgitates it all into charts and schemes. But he makes some very good penetrating points. And one of the arguments he comes back to again and again is what he calls the pre/trans fallacy. What he calls egoic states, or the self. Right? But this could also apply to many other things like the equanimity. Don't confuse a pre-egoic state with a trans-egoic state. Meaning a pre-egoic state is like an infant, a newborn infant that has not yet developed a sense of self and boundary of self. That's not the same thing as a trans-egoic state, which means someone who's gone beyond the ego. Having made the structure of an ego, then sees the emptiness of it, sees it's false and delusional, and goes beyond it. It's not the same thing. So this is parallel to the difference between indifference and true upekha. In the Thai tradition, they talk about as the state of indifference or dullness that can be confused with Upakha. They call it water buffalo equanimity. The water buffalo is a very stolid beast. It doesn't matter if flies are biting it or it's rainy or it's sunny or whatever. It's just it doesn't. It's very non-reactive. And that doesn't come from a place of wisdom or great understanding. It's just a place of dullness, dullness of consciousness. So that's not to be mistaken for equanimity, particularly of the quality of equanimity we talked about called the Tatra Majjhatthata. That's very sharp and awake and precise, clear. There's no dullness about it. That's the Tatra part is very important, that each phenomena is seen clearly in its nature, and there's no grasping for it, there's no holding to it, nor is there a revulsion from it. It's just as it is, seen clearly. Like the Vehapala being sitting at the top of the universe, surveying it all, but without any reaction, taking it all in. One other kind of equanimity to be mentioned is equanimity of energy. The energy is not too tight or too loose. The evenness of energy. This is the metaphor of the lute string. The musician Sona, not our modern Sona, although he was also a musician, but the one he was named after, this bhikkhu at the Buddha's time, who was a lute player before he ordained, and he was having trouble with his meditation, and the Buddha advised him and said, when you were a musician and you were tuning your lute, what would happen if you left the string too lax? And this is, well, it wouldn't make a proper sound. It would be very flat. What if you over tighten the string? Well, it'd be likely to break. So it is with your energy, your mind states. You have to learn this evenness of application. Not too tight, not too loose. Not too hard and not too soft. When you have the state of this perfect balance, which is a really fine balance, the knife edge, when you have this very fine balance, it's been called diligent effortlessness. There's no feeling of putting in an effort, of trying or striving. But at the same time, you're absolutely diligent. You're not missing a thing. And that's what it feels like when the energy is perfectly balanced. And there's this quality of upekha. So all these different aspects of upekha make it possible to escape from or see through the self-illusion. When the self-illusion is strong, when you have a strong identification with anything, then it's not possible to be equanimous. As long as you're viewing things through the lens of me and mine, then objects can't be seen in a neutral, clear way in their own nature. It's always seen from an egotistic point of view of a relation of, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? How's this going to affect me? That makes it impossible to be truly neutral about it, to be truly equanimous. There's a Taoist story in the, I think it's from the Tao Te Ching, about the farmer. One day his draft horse, wanders off and is lost. And all his neighbors are commiserating with him. Oh, you're ruined now. You've lost your horse. And he says, who knows? Maybe good, maybe bad. And then a few days later, the horse comes wandering back and bringing another horse with it. Now he's got two horses. And all his neighbors are all excited. Oh, you're so lucky. You've got two horses now. He says, oh, I don't know. Maybe good, maybe bad. And his teenage son is trying to train the new horse, trying to break it in. And he gets thrown and breaks his leg. And all the neighbors again the same thing. And he says, maybe good, maybe bad. And then the next couple of days, the king's soldiers come through the village recruiting young men to put in the army, but this young guy with a broken leg, they let him go. So it's this kind of whatever happens, it's the same reaction. Oh, it's just phenomena. Mm-hmm. Now, if you see things through a lens of self and benefit and loss, praise and blame, the worldly dhammas, then you can't be equanimous. Everything is going to be either a cause for celebration or a cause for despair. But from a quantumist position, everything is just as it is. That's just karma, that's just phenomena. And there's no me nor mine to make a relation point to it. So developing equanimity, in terms of meditation, it's training your mind to be non-reactive and holding everything with the same equal attention, not taking anything and making a special case of it. And also not ignoring anything. If you work this way, you develop more and more equanimity. You also have less and less of an I position that you fall back into, because you're not judging phenomena as beneficial or harmful, but just seeing them in their own nature as they are. And this can carry over into your daily life and activities. If you have a strong equanimous state of mind, you can deal with situations as they come up without becoming flustered or excited or confused. And this is just this set of circumstances I have to deal with now, and you carry it through. And it's good to develop these qualities like equanimity when you have the opportunity, when things are peaceful and you have an opportunity to be calm and work on it, so that when you're really put to the test, when something difficult comes along, then you've got something to fall back on. You've got a base you're working from. If you haven't developed equanimity in good circumstances, then when some kind of life crisis comes along, you're not going to be able to suddenly pull it like a rabbit out of a hat. You're not going to be able to find it. So that's a few words on the quality of Upekha.